Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and today we're doing episode 4 of our Getting Started with Plasticity USS Enterprise series. And so in this episode, our final episode, we're just going to add a little bit more detail and kind of talk about next steps. Remember that we are an affiliate. If you're looking to buy Plasticity and you want to help out and save a little bit of money, then you can use the code LEAD10 at checkout. That saves you 10%, and it also does help out the channel. There's going to be tons of things that I put in the description of this video. I'll put a link to the Patreon where you can download the data sets and the images. Remember that is free. I do have it set as a free post, so you don't need to pay for it. But if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, then we'll leave links to things like our courses for sale and our merchandise shop and all that kind of stuff. Right now, there's only one plasticity course that we've done on our Learn Everything About Design website. I have intended to do more, but unfortunately, I just haven't had the time to create a good course. And now that we're getting to the end of the year, I think it's going to wait until we get into version 26 of Plasticity. Version 26 of Plasticity. So I do have ideas and plans for new courses, but those will likely be coming early in the new year. So for this, if you had any trouble with the previous 3 episodes, version or the file name 04 USSE for USS Enterprise, episode 4, you can start with what we have here on the screen. I do highly suggest that you do work on your own design, but if you did have any trouble, then you do have this available and you can get started. And so what we're going to focus on for this episode is adding a couple of extra details. So we need to add this little satellite dish. We're going to add these little pieces on the side, a little block on the bottom. We've got a couple of features to put on those extra boosters. I'll talk a little bit about ways in which we can add additional details using things like imprint and the knife tool with lines and things like that, how we can divide things up. So we'll go ahead and we'll work on all of these different things in this video. And you can, of course, add as much detail as you want. Adding detail to a design certainly does take time, and I don't want to bog down a series getting started by spending, an hour modeling something and then spending 10 hours adding detail. Just keep in mind that as you begin to add detail like this, then you certainly are going to rapidly increase the amount of time that you spend on a design. And so for us, the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to toggle on section analysis. It's going to be based on the view that we're looking, and I'm going to right click to OK it. So now we can toggle section analysis on and off, and that allows us to essentially see into the middle of the design. And so what we're seeing left over here is going to be the image, and this is where we did that offset and that recess. And now what we want to do is we want to build out this little satellite dish. And so I'm going to start with my line tool. I'm going to find the center right here. I'm going to drag this out. And then I'm just going to make some shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to make this so that it does kind of look like a real dish. I'm going to hover over this and tap Shift. This will give me a parallel constraint or a sort of a parallel line here. And then we'll drag this back in. We'll come back to here, tap Shift, and then bring that down. So now we've got this profile. I'm going to select it, go to Revolve, pick 2 points on our sketch, right click, and this is a new body. And so if I turn off the section view and hide that curve, this is a new body that we created. Let's go ahead and hide the image as well. And so what we want to do is we want to join these together, but then we want to round things off. Now this is a really thin edge here, so I want to select it. I want to pull that out, make it a bit thicker. Again, the benefit of us having direct modeling. And so I'm going to select this body, use Boolean, grab this one, say Union, or hit Q on the keyboard and right click. And now I want to start to round off some edges. So I'm going to add a chamfer to this, so like a taper. And then on all the other edges, I want to start to round these off. Hold down Control. So after you've already made a selection and you've got a radius defined, you'll need to hold down Control to temporarily disable that. And then you can see more. I'm going to right click to accept. If you haven't added an edge yet, then what you'll need to do is you'll hold down Shift and then you can add more edges. But once you have a preview on the screen, you'll need to hold down Control, which will temporarily disable it. And so let's rotate this around. And again, if we were designing this for, let's say, 3D printing, at this stage, we would want to be really careful with geometry like this. A part like this likely would be printed by itself afterwards and then assembled, glued together, whatever the case might be. So I would essentially take a shaft that goes deeper into this and then print this on its own. You could likely get away with printing it in the Z direction. Let's see if I can rotate this like that. So you could likely print it like that. As long as these aren't too steep, you might be able to get away with printing it without support. But printing it on the rest of this model, unless you've got an SLA or an SLS process, would probably be pretty tough to do on an FDM printer. All right, so that's one little feature that we've added. Another feature that we want to add, if I bring the side view back, is this little piece right here. And so there are a couple ways that we can do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a rectangle, and I'm going to just do a 2-point or corner rectangle, and then extrude this out. I don't know where the rest of the solid is, so I'll bring that back temporarily. Let's just do it maybe to right there. Hide the original extrude, hide the curve. And then now I want to make this thin wall. So I just want it to have sort of the ribs on the outside. And so if I go in here and I start to type in shell, you'll notice that there is fillet shell, remove fillet from shells, and select all sheets. So the command to actually turn this into a hollow body is actually hollow. And so if you're coming from a CAD system, you're probably used to the term shell. Here we need to use the term hollow. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select those faces, and then we're going to type the command hollow. And then we're going to drag this, and this is going to create that thin wall section. And after we drag it, I'm going to select these two edges, and I'm just going to round them off. And then if we bring back that main body, you can kind of see they sort of just fade away into it. And so before I join that together, I'm going to select it, go to my commands, and mirror it across X. Again, make sure cut down mirror is off. That way it doesn't cut through the rest of the model. And then we can Boolean these together. So hold down Shift, make sure that you're doing a union, and we should be left with one solid body. So they're connected to both sides. It can be tricky, especially when we've got the images on. So sometimes it's just a good idea to turn those images off. Another thing that we want to add is this extra little block down here. And again, if you're looking at the real USS Enterprise, or if you have any knowledge or a model of it or something like that, then you can certainly spend the time and put in more detail. We're just making some basic shapes, and we're going to combine them together. So I'm going to start pulling this out, hit Tab so it goes in both directions, right click, and then hide that rectangle. And so now this is just a simple block that's down here. We can round it off if we need to. Again, we can use things like offset. If we want to offset a face, hold down Control to add an additional edge, and then use Boolean. And so we'll select this, Q on the keyboard, and then we just added some extra little detail. And so adding little bits and pieces like this can break up big, broad surfaces and add quite an extra little detail that may or may not have been there before. And so now another thing that we want to do is if I let's bring back some of these ISO images. And so one thing that I added to this design, there was a cutout on the inside here, and there was also this extra little piece on the top. So I'm going to talk about ways in which we can do these types of geometries. And so the first thing that I'm going to look at is this piece right here, just an extra bulk item that was added there. And so the way that I approach something like this is I'm going to, first I'm going to go back to an orthographic view, and I'm going to rotate this around and basically look at the object, in this case the USS Enterprise, in the orientation that I want to add that. And as soon as I'm in that orientation, I'll create a plane from camera. And so then I've got a temporary plane, and I'm just going to basically draw the shape. Now, it's currently trying to snap to the face, so I'm going to hold down Control and just draw a rectangle here. And then I'm going to rotate this around and start to extrude this out, hide the curve. And so what we did was we drew it sort of at the angle that we wanted it to be. And now to get it into its place, let's go ahead and look at it from the backside. I'm going to grab that. We're going to say move. But instead of just moving relative to the X, Y, or Z direction, what we're going to do is reset the pivot by hitting V on the keyboard. And once we do that, we're just going to select basically one of the faces here, and that'll put it normal to the direction that we created it. And so this allows us to create that geometry relative to the view that we had, and then we can just simply move it to the right position. Now, again, you could create a temporary surface or a plane in that manner like we did as an example for these upright pieces. But sometimes this is going to be the quickest and easiest way. And then from here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab these corners, shift select, create a full round, and then maybe taper the front there, hold down control and taper the back. And then while it's still selected, we will just mirror that about X. And so again, click X, make sure that cut down the mirror plane is off. So the reason why you might want to cut down the mirror plane, actually, let's take a look at an example, but let's Boolean these together first. So hold down Shift, union them, and accept it. And if you want to, let's say, round the corner where it attaches, you can. I'm just going to leave it square for this. All right, so let's look at this from a front view, and I'm going to turn on my overlays so that way I can see the coordinate system. And I'm just going to draw a 2-point rectangle that is crossing over that y-axis. All right, and so with something like this, if I want to mirror this across X, when I have a cut down mirror plane, notice that the amount that it was going over the mirror plane, it actually cut and left just that piece. Now, if we turn on union halves, notice the little piece goes away in the middle. But if we turn off cut down mirror plane, it keeps the rest of that body. And so sometimes that can be a nice option, but in some cases, you just want to make sure that you don't accidentally remove something that you need. And so for our purposes, I'm just going to delete that, but I wanted to just show it as a little example. All right, some other stuff that we want to talk about. Let's go ahead and this back face that we've added, I'm going to use O for offset. And then I'm going to pull this piece out and maybe round this corner, hold down control and round that corner, and then round that corner. Again, it doesn't necessarily fit or match the original Starship Enterprise, but this is just a quick way that we can just add a little bit more detail here. And let's come over here, hold down control and select that edge. And there we go. We just added, again, just a little bit more detail to break things up. And so let's just say we want to add some features here. There are a couple of ways that we can do this. Let's say that we wanted to divide this up. So there's actually a command. This is going to be a tricky one here. How do I describe this one? All right. Well, we're just going to use... I don't really have a great way to describe this tool, but we're just going to use Control and R on the keyboard, which is going to be the isoparam tool. Now, I think probably the best way to describe this tool is that it is a knife tool that allows us to divide up faces based on the UV direction of a surface. And that gets tricky. Maybe let's show it on this top face up here. So Control and R, and notice that it's dividing, it's creating the circle. If I hit Tab, then what it's doing is it's adding this line. If I hold down Shift and then roll the mouse wheel, then it's adding these extra divisions. And I can go and I can find potentially a center point. Let's go maybe right there. And I'm going to hold down Shift and divide it up a bit more. And then basically what this does is it allows us to divide up these areas, and then we can do things like pull them down a little bit or pull them up and offset those faces to create geometry, like windows or detail or whatever the case might be. And so that isoparam tool, maybe I pulled it too far because it's thinking pretty hard. But the isoparam tool is a very handy way to divide up. I'm going to do Control Z and undo because I don't really want to divide that up there, but it's a really handy way that you can divide up the face of geometry relative to its current shape. You think of UV as like an XY grid on the surface of a design. And so, for example, if we do it down here, Control and R, you can see that it's dividing it up in this direction. And if I hit Tab, it's creating sort of these vertical streamlines. And it's a great way for us to divide geometry up. And so in the context of, let's say, this face here, if I do Control and R and I hit Tab and hold down Shift and roll the mouse wheel, so you can see that I'm able to basically divide this up vertically. And I'm actually going to take the center line and hit Delete, which will just get rid of the edge. It won't actually do anything else. And then I'm going to do Control again, Control and R again. And then I'll divide it up this way and right click. And so now if I go through and I just shift select all of these little faces, what I can do now is I can pull them in. And if I hide the edges, basically you can see that I've pulled those things in and created that, inset geometry, like they're little windows or some sort of pattern on them. And so that's a really handy way that you are able to divide things up. Now, in the case of our model, I'm actually going to do Control Z and undo all that. But that is a nice technique that you have to be able to divide up geometry. Let's say that you wanted to divide it up a little bit more particular. Like you didn't want to go through and actually divide something up segmented based on UV, and you wanted to just get creative and add a window or a feature or geometry somewhere. And so let's go, let me think of an example. Let's do this right here. And so on this face, let's go ahead and take the line tool. In the bottom right, you can see we've got knife and Control Z to undo. So what I'm going to do is hit the K on the keyboard, and then I'm going to start drawing essentially on this face. And so what we did, and let's rotate this around, is we divided that up based on exactly what I drew there. And so if you need to have a very specific detail somewhere, whether it's a polygon like that, or you could do this with a spline. Let's say we take the spline and we use the knife tool, K on the keyboard, and we just kind of go like this. Basically what we did is we divided that face up even though we didn't go all the way to the edges. I'm going to do Control Z again to get rid of it. But that's a really nice thing that we can do if we're trying to add detail to a specific area. So let's say, what's a good example? Maybe there's like an extra little valve or something on here. So rectangle tool, K for the knife tool, and then I'll just draw that there. And it's not a very good example because of the angle, so I'll probably have to use the line tool. All right, K for knife, we'll go here, come down, back up, and again, so now we can inset that a little bit. I can use O to offset it now, and then I can pull it back out. And so now we've made this sort of, there's like a little bit of a gap around it, and then we've got this piece that comes out. And then you can obviously do some more work on this, and then we can round these corners off. And so now it kind of just looks like an extra little piece that's sticking out of there, almost like a memory card or something. But so those are just some general tools. And again, I'm going to Control Z and undo because I don't want to add it to that. But those are some general ways that you can still break up the geometry relative to simple tools like the line tool, circle, arc, spline, whatever the case might be. Or you can use the isoparam tool, which again is Control and R. That's a tough one to remember. Isoparam exists in Blender, so if you use Blender, then you might be familiar with the tool. But if you are coming from a CAD system, then you've probably never heard of it before. But isoparam is a great way to make symmetric divisions on faces based on their geometry and their curvature. And the knife tool in all of the curves, whether it's a circle or a polygon, spline, line, whatever the case might be, is a great way to create very specific cuts and things like that. And so that is going to be the extent of this series. Let's go back to perspective. I'm going to turn off the edges, maybe turn on render mode. So that's going to be the extent of what we do in this series. As I mentioned very early on, I'm likely going to pass the model on to Peter at Take Refuge 3D. He does a lot of rendering, animation, and game style work, and he's much better suited to basically take this a next step if you want. But if you want to go ahead and add more detail, play around with it, mess around with it, I would love to see what you did. You can always send me an email, support@caducator.com. And you can also leave comments if you make a video or something, leave a comment on this one and we can check it out. But if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Consider liking this video if you do like it, and we'll get out to more people. And if you have any comments or questions on anything else, please leave them and let me know. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.